Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Harmonious World. My name is Hilary Seabrook. Harmonious World is all about me chatting with other musicians about the things that make them tick. For this episode, I'm delighted to be chatting with pianist and researcher Elisa Rumici, who I was introduced to by a good friend of the podcast, Michael Shapiro. I'll put some links in the show notes for some of the episodes that I've spoken to him, and you can also see some of my reviews online. Elisa has a new album out now. It's called Rediscovering Gilda Ruta, a Transatlantic Pioneer of Music. And although I've sort of shifted a little into not playing music from the past and looking at new music, this is effectively new music because Gilda Ruta has faded into obscurity. She was around at the turn of the 20th century, and she's really disappeared from all of the music. And I want to talk to Elisa about how she discovered her. So what you're listening to right now is Capriccio Brillante, written by Gilda Ruta. But I hope you enjoy listening to my conversation with Elisa. It's a real pleasure to meet you, Elisa. Thank you
It's
for
a
joining
pleasure
me.
to meet you.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I'm so glad that Michael Shapiro introduced us.
Yeah, he's super nice. I met him when I went to this piano festival in the Hamptons 2 years ago. And he was in the public at one of the concerts. And then he sent me some of his pieces that I learned, but it's not that easy for me to travel to the States. I can't do that very frequently. So I haven't had the chance to play them for him yet.
Right. No, well, he's coming to the UK, I think, next year, I think in June. So,
Oh, that's
yeah.
amazing. Good to
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Well, perhaps we could all get together. That would be really nice.
Yeah, that would be lovely. Also, I didn't realize how close London is to Basel. Like it's so well connected. In my mind it was very far away, but it's quite easy to get there actually.
Absolutely. A couple of times recently, I've used trains to get all over and to get into Switzerland and Austria and Italy. It's really easy now.
Yeah.
So I want to talk to you about your work with Gilda Ruta. This is very exciting.
Yeah, I'm so happy. I feel like sometimes sometimes you just feel that something is right for you. You know what I mean? And when I discovered her, I knew that was the right thing to do. And I was working on other projects, so to be fair, I had zero time, but still I made time for it, and I'm so happy I did it because besides that, it gave me the opportunity to discover so many other Italian musicians that history just cancelled. And that's really crazy for me because I feel like I'm when I play her music, when I present her work, I never expect people to necessarily like it. That's beside the point. Like that's not my point. I don't care if people like it, but I think people deserve to have access to cultural heritage and then make a decision whether they like this or not.
Yes, and I think there are other women, aren't there? I mean, Clara Schumann is becoming much more respected now. It's almost like she's come out of the shadow of her family.
Yeah, but again, if you think about it, we are still talking about women who, in some ways, had huge privilege in their life because we are anyway talking about women who had access to education,
Yes.
who had support from their father. In both cases, they were both supported by the father because, especially in Italy, women were not even allowed to study composition. But Gilda Ruta could do that because her father was a teacher. And he connected her with other professors who taught her composition. So that was already a layer of limits that was removed. So when
Right.
I see the challenges that people like her or Clara Schumann had to face, I'm wondering what did poor women to
Absolutely.
face. That's why we don't even hear about them because I think they had no chance.
No, that's right. No, and I think one of the reasons that your work with Gilda Ruta and her work and her compositions is because you are a pianist and b a researcher, so you're able to bring those two things together.
Yeah, that's also the thing that I believe is super important because I I I say it with all the respect for theorists who do a job that is very much needed, but at the same time there is a knowledge that has been kind of overlooked for a lot of time. That is the knowledge that you gain only from practical engagement with something. There is something that you can really perceive only when you put your hands, you know? Like in Italian, we would say put your hands in the dough when you really cook it, you know?
Right.
Um, and I think this is even stronger when you research on a composer who was playing the same instrument as you. Because, for example, in the case of Gilda Ruta, there was this probably marketing advertisement story that circulated that says that she had been a student of Franz Liszt. And we know from a historical perspective that this couldn't be possible. Like
Right.
they have never been in the same place at the same time. But to me, that was immediately obvious when I played her music. It feels completely different from playing Franz Liszt. And there's another point. Gilda Ruta was a very good pianist, just like Clara Schumann. They were amazing pianists. And so to be able to bring this music back to life, you must be a professional pianist. Like you need to know how to make things work because if you don't, then the music doesn't sound like it should. Like you can't play slower. You have to go for it, you know? Otherwise
Right.
it's not gonna work.
Ah, that's very interesting. That's a really interesting perspective, I think. So, how did you first discover her work?
You know, I always wish that my stories would start in a more interesting way, but I was just having coffee. And I don't know if it ever happens to you, but I have days where I feel incredibly creative and I feel like my brain is just going fast, very fast. And I had all these ideas in my head. And I just started researching on Italian women composers and I couldn't find much. Besides there are always these two and three that come up. And then I was like, come on, how come I can't find any pianist? And then I ended up in this sort of German encyclopedia, and Gilda Ruta was mentioned, and I thought, oh my God, how come I never heard about her? And so I started looking for information, and I found a book written about her. And then I went to a conference, and at this conference, I talked about everything what I wanted to do, everything what I wanted to find out about her. And this was one of those cases in life that sound a bit like a movie, but in the audience there was a woman, a professor, and she's a friend of a writer of a book about Gilda Ruta. They're
Ah,
friends. And she was so kind because, it was my first conference ever. I was very shy, I had no experience. And she came to me, she introduced herself, and she gave me his number. And this scholar is such a generous man. He's really someone who loves what he is doing and he's so open and he accepted to have a long call with me, and I would say 5 minutes afterwards he had sent me everything he had, all his archive, including
wow.
articles, the scores. you know with male composers you often have a wife who took care of the archive, so you
Yeah.
can actually find material, but with women composers no one cared.
So,
So her scores had left forgotten all over Italy, some even in the States. And luckily, this incredible scholar had the means to travel and collect everything. So I didn't have to do that myself because I
wow.
couldn't afford it, honestly.
No.
I'm a student, I can't do something like that. And that made the whole work possible. Then with one piece, we thought it was incomplete. Then after the recording process, he found the missing page. It's fine. This is part of research, when you do something that has never
Yeah.
done before. And I'm still collaborating with him, and I'm so grateful because I feel like, especially in the music field, we tend to be very individualistic and often competitive, and this, I think, kills music.
Yeah.
And I discovered how much you can actually build when you collaborate and you move from thinking about your ego to thinking about doing something for the music world.
Which he clearly did because he shared all of that resource with you. That's amazing.
Yes, and he supported me also when I recorded the CD, also in finding the missing page back. And also, encouraging me because this is also an aspect that no one talks about when we talk about music and research. We are often lonely. Like when I started this, I had no clue what would have happened. I had no one really supported me. Like I had my parents, but they are not musicians. I had my friends, they are not musicians.
Yeah.
So having someone within the field telling me, go on, do it, it's worth it. This means a lot.
Yeah. That's an amazing story. It's really interesting. I this podcast I've sort of because there's so much music being released, I'm trying to sort of avoid reinventions of, I don't know, Bach or Brahms or whatever. I feel like those have been done and they're not so interesting to me. But this is really interesting because this is new music effectively because no one's done this. No one has recorded Gilda Ruta's oeuvre before.
Yeah, there's a CD, some piano and some leader, so music for piano and voice, but that's it. And
Right.
again, I think it's a pity, and I think it's a pity also because by rediscovering her, we can rediscover so many other people. And what shocked me as an Italian was that when I went to school and I studied music history, there are these chapters about the 20th century instrumental repertoire. And every time you read that, most music had been written abroad in France, in Germany, in Russia, and that Italy had been dominated by opera, which is true. It's true. But at the same time, we've had composers who wrote music for piano. We've had some. Besides, the few that we know, like Martucci, Casella, Malipiero, and so on, we had more than this. So again, my point is, why are we erasing what we have?
Yeah.
What? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. And especially I think historically women do tend to get pushed to one side. And so this is a great opportunity to redress that balance a little.
I think so. And also by, reading all these articles that so kindly this scholar Villar gave me access to, something that really got all my attention was how she was described, because that's also very interesting. When you read the articles, and this is something I show when I do workshops at universities or conferences, you can't quite understand who she was. She's always idealized and described through stereotypes that can be either positive or very negative, but anyway, there are always some sort of extremes. She's always filtered through her gender and her
Yeah.
nationality.
Yeah.
No matter what she does, she's always an Italian woman or a South Italian woman, depending who writes. And sometimes, articles talk about her like a feminist, like someone whose achievements are an inspiration for other women as well. Then there are articles who praise her for being this, perfect wife, perfect mother, who sacrificed everything for love. Then there are these articles who talk about her in a positive way, but in comparison to other women,
Yeah.
Like she's an exception, and she reinforces the stereotypes that other women can't do that. So, and then there are also articles, luckily, who just talk about her work and mention her together with other men composers. But my point was that by reading all these documents, I was really wondering, who is she? And you can't quite understand this by how people describe her. So I really thought, turning to her music is the only way we have to maybe get an impression of how she wanted to portray herself, to have a bit at least her perspective.
Yes, and that's where we get her perspective, isn't it? In the music.
Absolutely. And also, there's another thing that changed so much the way I listen now to music in general, which is, when you approach her repertoire, something that I believe comes across immediately is that it's a rather traditional language that can be described as conservative. And this is something that I believe nowadays is considered pretty negatively. Because when we talk about music that is traditional, we immediately think it lacks innovation and we praise innovation. We are a society that praises, moving forward. And so the fact that she's conservative to us might sound like she had nothing new to say. And so I researched about it and I discovered that actually innovation is something that we started praising pretty recently. Back then, when she was writing, innovation was seen as something to be skeptical of, sometimes even dangerous, something to approach with care. And articles of that period praise her precisely because she was writing good, real, concrete music, that she was this reassuring figure that had studied the classics and was able to write real music, not like those modern weirdos. And the thing is that she had to support herself and her family economically, meaning she had to sell the music she was writing. She couldn't just write what she liked. And so again, was she free to be very creative? How free was she? Or did she have to limit herself into writing something that could be understood and that could be sold to the public that women composers had, which rarely was a public of professional, usually was a public of students, of amateur. So again, how free was she to express herself creatively as a composer? That's also a question that is valid not just for her, but for, I believe, any composer who had to sell his music and make a living out of it.
Yes, indeed. At this point, I would like to play a little bit of Mesta Serenata because I
Oh, it's
really
my
like that.
favorite.
Is it? I really
It,
like it. The
it
best
is.
thing about having a podcast is that I get to choose my favorite pieces. So let me play a little clip of that and then we'll talk about the musicality of that because I think it's quite interesting. So, how difficult was Mr. Serenata to play?
You know, that's a good question. I think because it was really together with other two pieces, it was my favorite one. I felt it so close to me. To me, it's one of her most sincere works. Again, I said I think she wrote some pieces to be able to sell them. I think Mesta Serenata is one of those pieces that she really wrote with her heart fully open. I can't prove it,
Yeah.
but as a performer, this is how at least I felt. And there's something beautiful for me to when I play her music is that it's a way for me to reconnect with Italian music tradition. And like Gilda Ruta, I also moved abroad. So there's a singing quality of her works that to me feels incredibly natural because it's so close to the music tradition I grew up within. And so I would say in the case of Mesta Serenata, I did particularly challenging. Um, but what I find challenging when I play her music is to find in general the balance between this cantabile, this power that we find, for example, in pieces like Elegia, there are these octaves, these chords. Sometimes I believe it can sound a little bit overwhelming. So the difficulty was to bring this cantabile no matter the texture of the music. And also there are pieces like Primavera that she played so often. And Primavera is characterized by all these trills, which, sorry, but they are a pain. They are really a pain. And it's not a surprise that this piece is full of trills and that she played it so often. Apparently, I read this again in some articles. She was famous for her trills. She was really good at them. And so to play this piece, I had to become, I don't know if good, but I had to become better at playing them myself. And that's
Yeah.
again when I say, like when you research and when you play this music, you have to be a good pianist because you
Yeah.
have to find the way to gain and to get closer to her technique as much as you can.
Ah, that's really fascinating because I think trills are one of those things that's really interesting because it's quite difficult to explain it to a
Mm.
non-musician.
Hmm.
They've heard them, it's those wobbly bits where a note is played and the note sort of either a semitone above or below, or sometimes all three or whatever it is, you know. But um, again, it's an indication of virtuosity when you can study something like that and put your mind to that kind of detail within a musician within a composer's music.
Absolutely. And this, by the way, is one of those pieces that she played both in Italy for the Queen, for example. Like, can you believe? Like, she was playing so often for the
Yeah.
Queen and we forgot about her. How can it be? And she played it a lot in the States as well. So
Um,
this was really something she was probably very comfortable doing. And the other thing that surprised me, and I think it's something we might take for granted nowadays, but she was so brave and so modern in doing concerts where she would play only her music. It's something that was uncommon back then. And she
right.
used to do it so often. And there are articles in New York referring to that with surprise, saying, I'm not gonna quote it perfectly, but saying something like that is not common to hear so much music by the same composer, especially a woman composer.
Wow.
And Primavera, this piece was often there.
Yeah. Oh, that's really interesting. Thank you for sharing that. Can you talk a little bit about your background? How did you discover that you were a pianist?
This is very funny because I come from a family of non-musicians. My mom has always had huge talent as an artist. She paints wonderfully, she draws wonderfully, she writes poems. She's really talented. but she didn't have the economic possibility when she was a child to study any of that. And she has always loved music, but that remained just a passion. And when I grew up, music was part of my everyday life. I listened to music, I loved it, and I sang the whole time. I really like you know how children wake up and scream and cry. I used to wake up and sing. And so my parents gave me the possibility to attend singing lessons. You know, also, I believe that if you have to listen to your child sing all day long, you wanna
Yeah, you.
you wanna try to have it good at least, you know. And in these singing lessons, we had a piano, but we were not allowed to play it. And for me, this piano was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. I was so in love with this instrument. And by that time, I had also discovered this Disney cartoon. I don't know the translation in English. In Italian, it's Aristogatti, something like Aristocats.
Oh yeah, the Aristocats. Yeah,
Yeah, and you know, they are always playing and singing.
yeah,
And when I saw that, I thought, come on, I really want to play the piano. But again, also in my family, this would have been economically quite challenging. So it took me 1 year to convince my parents to you know save to allow me to get piano lessons. And when I did, I fell in love with the instrument. Like I've always been in love with piano so
right.
much. I didn't know I wanted to become a pianist. It's something I discovered pretty late, to be fair. I didn't have a classic, straightforward, clear path. But the thing is that if I don't play, I don't feel like I am myself, you know. I don't feel well, like I need to
Mm.
play. When music is, if I don't have music in my life, I don't feel like myself. And
Yeah,
then I figured a way to have this as part of my everyday life and to make it a profession.
yeah. That's a lovely story, and I think it's true. I think all of the musicians I talk to, and the work that I review, there is that sense of it's so in your core, you can't imagine not being able to somehow experience that all the time. And I think for non-musicians, I think, for it's not the same for for some other sort of talents that people have, but I think it definitely is for musicians. Yeah.
Also, I think it's for me, it's not just about enjoying music by listening to it. I need the physical contact with the instrument.
Yes.
And that's also why when I approached research, well, first research grew naturally into me, like something I've always done instinctively, of course in a naive way, unstructured, but it's something I've always done. But when I decided to do it more systematically, for me it was very clear that I wanted to do it from within, you know, like in a practical way. It had to be practice based research, otherwise it wouldn't have made sense for me.
Yeah. And that, of course, is why we're coming full circle to where we started, which is why Gilda Ruta resonated with you so much because she was an Italian woman who played the piano in the same way that you are.
And she was an Italian woman who played the piano and who had to move abroad
Yeah.
to be allowed to really do it professionally. Because in Italy, the situation, you know, the society was not ready for that. So she
No.
did it as much as she could, but there were too many boundaries. And that's also why I think her story resonates, not just with me, but with so many, because how many people have to move, maybe not necessarily abroad, but to change town, to change city, to be themselves?
Yeah.
Women, men, anyone, you know, I think, especially, you know, I come from a small island, and this is very much part of my identity. I feel so connected to where I'm from, but I'm aware that to learn more things and to develop as a musician and as a person, I had to move somewhere else. And being abroad, I found so many other people like me with different stories, but they all share this need, which is also a privilege because we could do it. But in a way, this also resonates with Gilda Ruta's story because, you know, I still can't get used to the fact that this woman, she was my age, she had lost her husband, she had no money, and she took all she had, meaning two children, young children, her luggages, few letters of recommendation, and she started a new life in America, like so
Yeah.
distant from home. And I believe this can give so much empowerment and strength to other people who have to face challenges. You know, when I have to do something difficult, I know it sounds stupid, but when I really feel like I don't know how to do it and I'm scared, sometimes I really think, she did something like that. Elisa, you can get on that
Yeah.
train. You can get on that plane because you are so lucky. You have so many people around you who love you and who believe in you. She didn't have that. So
Yeah.
the least you can do is to try because she did something much harder.
Oh, that's inspiring. I know several of the musicians who I've interviewed, and I'm thinking one in particular, a pianist called Paul Edis, who from the UK, who moved down from the north of England to London, but he did it right at the start of COVID. And that, if you're thinking about a spanner being thrown in the works, an obstacle being thrown at you, that absolutely well, I mean, it was an obstacle for many people, especially musicians, but I think particularly to have moved and for that to happen. And I think there is something about music. We were introduced. I'm in the UK. You're in Switzerland. Michael Shapiro introduced us. He's in America. And I think there is something lovely about those connections across nationalities and across locations within music.
And this is also something that I'm so grateful for, and I see also in Gilda Ruta's case because I talked about the challenges she had to face and all the limits, but she has also been supported. For example, Martucci, who has always been a really, really important figure in Italian music world. He has always been recognized for being a central figure in the music world in Italy. He was one of her biggest supporter, and the queen as well, and her father as well, and the publisher Ricordi as well. And again, this I believe is also something that can remind all of us that when we do something, it's of course because of our effort and our hard work, but we shouldn't forget all the people who have supported us at different levels. When I moved abroad, I was lucky enough to have a teacher, Professor Filippo Gamba, who has been not just a great professor, a great inspiration. He's a wonderful pianist, but he has been someone who gave me structure, calm, trust, stability. He put me in a condition where I was able to be courageous and try new things. And I've had friends who took care of me when I had really hard times and who were there to support me when I had to do something difficult. And my parents, who, they allowed me to do things that they never had the chance to do. And they supported me through challenges that were new for them as well because they are not musicians and they had hope and faith in my ideas. They challenged me, like they didn't just let me do things because they wanted to. They always wanted me to be responsible and to be very clear what I was doing with the money they were giving me, and what my goals were, and they wanted to see me working hard, but they gave me the chance to do that. And so in the case of Gilda Ruta as well, she had challenges, but if she had been able to overcome obstacles, was because of her hard work, but also because at times she had the support to actually do that. And I think this is the same for all of us. We often focus on the challenges we have, and when things go well, we just believe we deserve it, you know? We just take it for granted because that's how it's supposed to be. Well, when things go right, it's because of so many factors that align, and we should be thankful for that.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you, and I hope we get to meet at some point. I hope you get to travel to the UK and play some of this wonderful music.
I would love to. Thank you. And again, thanks to Michael. He has been one of those people that has supported me since the beginning, and I'm so grateful. I love his music, and it's wonderful, as you said, to have this privilege to connect with people from other countries and create this network and of people who are thinking alike in some ways, right? So
Definitely.
thank you. I really hope we get to meet in person soon and with
Yeah.
him as well.
Thank you for joining me for that wonderful conversation with Elisa Rumici. And thank you again to Michael Shapiro for introducing us. What you're listening to now is the gorgeous Notturno from Gilda Ruta, and from this album that Elisa Rumici has produced. Thank you for joining me once more for Harmonious World. Please do get in touch, support the show. I'm an independent podcaster, which means you don't get any adverts, and it's just me chatting with another musician. So enjoy, and thank you for joining me. Thank you for listening to the latest episode of Harmonious World. My name is Hilary Seabrook, and it's a great delight to bring this series of discussions with musicians and composers and writers and all sorts of people to you. Obviously, there's no point in having a podcast if people aren't listening, and I'm very grateful to my listeners for doing so. Thanks also to Joe English for composing and performing this new theme tune. So wherever you get your podcast, you can leave a review. You can share this with your friends and family, either as a link or on social media and that sort of thing. I'd be really grateful for that. Don't forget that you can subscribe now. There's a link wherever you get your podcasts. So have a great week, and please remember why I started this, which is just to try and make the world a little more harmonious. Thanks for listening to Harmonious World.